So
Mm.
you mentioned that you were diagnosed with an eating disorder at some stage. I think from looking at your bio and your website, that was around your mid-adolescence. Do you mind talking about that a little bit, about that journey and how that even happens? How do you realise that something's not right? And and what are you thinking? I think that's like, you mentioned that before.
Mm.
Someone who hasn't got it is like, well, just eat more.
Mm.
Obviously, if it was anything that resembled that as a solution, we wouldn't have such a horrific problem.
Yeah, totally. So for me, I literally remember that conversation with a friend. I think it was Mary Kate and Ashley. I saw in a magazine. And I was like, why can't they just eat? They should just eat. I could never, ever do that. And it was literally about a year later, I found myself in a place. And I was with my friends and they made a comment about my weight. And for me, I'd always grown up with my sisters being told how beautiful we were. Like people would stop us and everything like that. And so it became my whole identity. And I didn't realize it was my whole identity, but being beautiful was the thing I was, felt like the thing I was good at because I hadn't really discovered anything else about me yet. Anyway, so a friend made a comment
So
about my
wait,
weight
people
and
would stop you and your sisters just along the way, like at the shopping mall or something.
yeah, all the time. And people
Wow.
think that's probably a positive thing, but it did a lot of damage because it built up this whole identity and this is what we're good at and this is what people say. And we get praise off this. So when someone said something contrary to that, it had a massive impact and kind of shattered my whole identity. And so when I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw myself as beautiful, but I began to see myself as ugly and disgusting, felt embarrassed, felt ashamed of myself. And I thought I could fix my body. And so for me, I did what a lot of teenage girls do, and I went on a diet. And so I cut out all different sorts of things and started exercising. And I started getting a lot of praise for it. So a lot of people are like, oh, you're looking really good. Ah, good on you. And I felt good too, um, which was awesome. But it was like this moment, it just went, and it literally went from this really good thing to I have no idea what's going on. And it went from me being in control to me being completely out of control. And almost having like a bully inside my head and telling me what I had to do, telling me how much exercise I had to do, what I could and couldn't eat. And if I went against it, the thoughts were excruciating. So horrible thoughts of like, people won't like you if you do this or if you don't do this, or you're disgusting or you're fat or you're ugly. And so if I ate something, I could see myself completely different in the mirror afterwards. And yeah, and all the feelings of guilt and anxiety and shame and embarrassment would flood in. And it was awful. And so, well, it was like all those things are a fear response to because food becomes your fear. But actually, there's bigger fears behind that. The fears of a lot of people are really scared of getting out of control because they feel in control with the eating disorder, even though their eating disorder is in control. Or people get really scared of judgment, or people won't like me anymore, I'll be abandoned, or all these sorts of different things. And so when you do the opposite to what your eating disorder says, you have this massive fear response, which is terrifying. And what do we do in human nature? We run away from fears, which pushes you towards your eating disorder constantly. And for me, what happened was with anorexia, I didn't even know it was anorexia because I didn't know what anorexia was. But more and more and more, my world just shrunk, and more what I could eat and so exercise increased all the time. Food shrunk. And rules became more, and behaviors around food, like having to heat it up a certain amount of times or this or that, became more. And it was just all consuming. I could look at something and know exactly how many calories were in it. And my parents noticed what was happening. And so they took me to a doctor and I got a diagnosis of anorexia. But I didn't believe it. I really didn't believe it. I knew something was wrong, but
Oh,
I didn't
really?
believe I had anorexia. I was like, I don't have anorexia. And I think because of the body image distortion too, you don't see it because you don't think you match being skinny enough or sick enough. So you don't believe that you're struggling with anorexia. So for me, I was like, I'm not skinny enough. Um, but my story is was at doctors and got really, really unwell to the point where my body was shutting down. I was having to get blood tests multiple times a week. My kidneys were failing. And I really had no life. Like it kept promising me, like, people will like you, people will praise, like, like this amazing thing, which people think it is sometimes in society. But it robbed me of everything. It impacted family relationships. I couldn't focus at school. I'd still get good grades, but I couldn't focus. And I
How long
lost a
until
lot
this
of my
are you now? So
friendships.
from that time that you first started going, hey, I'm going to try some
Mm,
dieting, to
mm.
the sort of situation you're talking about now, how long was that over?
Like a few months.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
literally a few months. So my whole world and my whole family's world changed so fast. Yeah, and so I just remember being so hopeless because I really didn't see a way out. It felt too hard, like I wanted to recover, but this thought, I used to have a picture of the well Jess, and I'd look at that every day to remind myself, I don't want to go back there. I don't want to have that body again. That's disgusting. That's embarrassing. I don't want to feel those feelings. And so the fear of recovery outweighed staying where I was.
Wait,
And
so
so
you
I
had a
was like,
picture of yourself at a
healthy weight.
healthy weight, healthy mind, and you put that there as an incentive not to go back to that. Wow.
Yeah. And so every day I'd look at it and be like, I'm not doing that. And the fear outweighed. So I know people are like, oh, but wouldn't life be better without your eating disorder? And yes, 100,000,000% it is. But when you're in it, you can't see that. And I was still, even though I was literally nearly on my deathbed, I was getting compliments from people of, I wish I was as skinny as you. You look so good. And so it fuels the eating disorder. And so it felt safer to stay in this awful place, being bullied 24/7, like, with awful emotions, than the emotions of anxiety and guilt and actually getting better. But a turning point for me was I got exercise taken off me. I got everything taken off me and had no life. And I went to a hip hop audition secretly behind everyone's back because I wanted to be able to secretly exercise. I wasn't a dancer, but I ended up getting into this hip hop crew. And it became something I was really passionate about. And so we went to regionals. We didn't get wildcard. We didn't get into nationals. But on the day where I was meant to go to hospital was the day my hip hop crew got wildcarded through to nationals. And it was like this turning point for me because I remember sitting in the doctor's office thinking, do I want to go to hospital and just sit there and be forced to eat and no one even cares? Like, no one cares that I'm there. Like, my family cares, but like, everyone else lives a life, whereas I'm in hospital. Or do I actually want to try and fight this thing and actually go on and live a life without it and go to nationals? And nationals was that greater purpose to me. Like, I'm a big believer people have to have a greater purpose to fight for than being skinny. And so it was like that moment of, I'm going to fight. And anorexia had a backup plan. It was like, just put on weight, go to nationals, and I'll lose it all afterwards. That was the backup plan. So I begged my doctor.
It's still pathological, right? But
exactly. But it was like, you can go to nationals. You don't have to go to hospital. And
yeah.
so my doctor was literally there filling out the forms for hospital, and I begged her, and I was just like, please don't send me to hospital. Can I go to nationals? I'll do whatever it takes. And she was like, you have to put on a certain amount of weight in this amount of time to be able to go. And I literally just remember going home and having food, and it was like my worst fear. And I know people can't understand this unless you've actually been through it. It's really hard to understand how could food actually be a fear. But it was literally my worst fear, and I'd have tears just streaming down my face. And I'd have a journal there writing down all the thoughts of what the eating disorder was saying. Things like, you're ugly, you're disgusting, you shouldn't eat this, you're going to get fat, no one's going to like you. And I'd just replace it and be like, actually, I'm not going to get fat. Like, food doesn't mean fat, or food doesn't mean out of control, or food doesn't mean people don't like me. And I just replace it with what could be the truth, even though it felt so wrong. And I made it to nationals, and that year my crew won the hip hop competition. And I literally just remember being like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to this life of nothing where I'm stuck. And so I didn't go along with anorexia's backup plan, and I kept fighting. And for me, that looked like targeting exercise. Like, how do I reduce it? And something I've realized, it's all about, like, exercise is a really good thing, but when you have an eating disorder, it's not. It's this thing which controls you, and it's emotion, it's fear driven. There's emotions. It's not enjoyable. It's punishment. And so
you're
I had to balance.
not doing the actual exercise and going, there's no fun in it at all when you're actually doing
Well,
it.
sometimes, like, I think you trick yourself that this is fun, this is enjoyable, because it's that relief of you escaping the fear, escaping the thought. So you do get this rush and you do get this relief of like, oh, but it's like,
Takes a negative thought away.
yeah, it takes a negative thought, a negative emotion away, but yet those only get stronger. And then more anxiety gets attached to it and more negative thinking gets attached to it. So it's really challenging it. And I had to go on this whole journey of rediscovering what's normal, what's healthy, rediscovering how to actually I don't think you ever go to a place of loving your body, but it's accepting your body and being thankful for your body and what it can actually do for you. It's not like you ever get to the place where you look in the mirror and be like, oh, hot damn. But it's not about that. It's literally about like, how do I actually accept who I am and discover who I am and have that greater purpose in my life than being skinny. And actually, the more and more I got better, the more I like almost built up evidence against my eating disorder that the fears that it held me captive in were never coming true. Like, I actually got more friendships. I got more like things, like everything I desired, which I thought I could have in my eating disorder, I got out of it. Like, I was the one in control. Eating disorder wasn't in control anymore, even though I thought I was in control in it. I wasn't, and I was in control. I got to have a healthier relationship with exercise where I can actually enjoy it. I can eat and actually be in control. And it's not going from this place of rules within eating disorder to out of control. It's actually, I'm in control. I create boundaries around food now, and I get to enjoy it, and I get to be social with it and all those sorts of different things. So freedom's really good.